All right. But hi, thanks for stopping by. Please join myself, Bart Maholitz, Leah Cheddar, Christine Bruce, and Patricia Ives as we discuss what it means to be media literate in today's world. Media literacy is the ability to understand presented information and respond appropriately. Media is the method by which messages are distributed to an audience, including mass media. That is not limited to newspapers, television, social media, film, radio, video games, books, artificial intelligence devices, and several others. Taking the traditional literacy skills of reading, speaking, writing, and listening effectively and applying them to all forms of media is the basis of media literacy. Next. We are surrounded by various forms of media every day. As of October 2021, it has been reported that average daily social media usage worldwide is 145 minutes per day. That's almost 2.5 hours. Media shapes our opinions, we connect with friends and family through it, and we educate ourselves as well as others through media. Next. Two central concepts that are a part of media literacy are media messages and media effects. Media messages refer to the underlying message and intention of all media, aiming to entertain, educate, or persuade. Advertisements distributed through any medium have mastered messages with multiple intentions. It is important to recognize that all media is created to serve a purpose that is the intended information the creators want to convey to the audience. Next. Media effects refers to the measurable effect as a result of media messages. Mass media can impact an audience's thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors, often with the capability of shaping modern culture. Media can reinforce existing beliefs, good or bad, and has the potential to evoke important changes. When we think of things like mass media and social media and the effects that they've been able to, or things that they've driven, things like Me Too, Black Lives Matter, Idle No More, Orange Shirt Day, and Bell Let's Talk Day. All of them have had their fair share of positive and negative effects, positive outcomes, as well as criticisms. Next. Fake news and misinformation has the ability to shape our opinions on many important topics, including but not limited to politics, healthcare, and current events. Misinformation can be delivered intentionally or unintentionally. We have seen this in the political sphere over the last 5 or more years. Leah will go on more about this and how it can be consumed and responded to. Next. When it comes to the media selecting which stories to tell, which events are covered, and how the stories will be told, they will default to their organization's beliefs, often associated with the viewpoint or worldview of those who are backing them financially. On the right, you will find a media bias chart taken from allsides.com that rates news outlets based on their online content. It uses blind bias surveys, editorial reviews, independent reviews, and third-party data to assess bias and compares it with the political spectrum. You can see on the far left, MSNBC and CNN. The Associated Press and NPR are in the center, and off on the left is Fox News, off on the right is Fox News. Where do you get your news? Next. Studies have shown a link between heavy social media use and anxiety and depression. Influencers have become as harmful as online bullies, but why? Younger consumers may not fully understand the extent to which posts created by influencers and how they compare themselves to what they see to be an ideal life, despite influencers portraying an unrealistic, luxurious life. Critical thinking skills are essential for viewing this type of media objectively. I'll pass it on to Christine now. Thank you.
Thanks, Bart, for doing a great job at getting our conversation going. I will be focusing on teaching media literacy to children. When we hear the term literacy, our mind automatically shifts to reading. It's a term we've been programmed to associate it with. However, literacy can take on many different forms, writing being one and math literacy being another. Each of these requires learning the basics and then moving to more complex ideas. Media literacy can take on the same pathways. Children are exposed to a significant amount of media information, and the digital age has made it easier for anyone to create media. We don't always know who created something, why they made it, or whether it's credible. This makes media literacy tricky to learn and tricky to teach. Nonetheless, media literacy is an essential skill in the digital age. So where do we go from here? Next, there are 6 essential skills that we need to teach children. I made a lot of connections to these skills to what I teach during guided reading and the types of questions I ask during benchmarking. Teaching these skills is not necessarily adding more work to the teacher's plate. It's just adding another layer to something that we are already doing. So the first skill we need to teach children is to learn to think critically. Kids need to evaluate the media they are viewing, make a decision about if the messages make sense, think about why certain information was included, but also to consider what was not and why it wasn't included, and what are the key ideas. Once they have thought about it critically, then they can make up their own minds about the information received. See TED Talk with Andrea and the additional resources to look into this further. Number 2, become a smart consumer of products and information. Teaching students to be media literate helps kids learn to know if something is credible. Look at techniques used in advertising. 3, recognizing point of view. Every creator has a perspective. Identifying an author's viewpoint helps kids understand where the author is coming from, something that we actually already teach in our reading literacy lessons. Why did the author write this book? What is the author's message here? It also helps put the information into context of what they already know or what they think they know. Think of the KWL charts. Create media responsibility. This I find for lower grades will take some work. It is recognizing that what the student is saying, that they have a viewpoint which is their own, and teaching them that what they want to say and how they want to say it will impact others or how their message is received. 5, identify the role of media in our culture. Our world is full of media that attempts to influence how we should act, talk, and think. Media has a way of shaping who we are in either a positive or a negative way. And number 6, understand the author's goal. This last skill asks your students to think, but to also understand what the author wants you to take away. Is it informative? Is it trying to influence or change your mind? Is it introducing you to new ideas you have never heard of? And again, this is similar to questions we asked during benchmark times. Next. This slide here, when teaching kids to be media literacy, I also found a study that supports this. You can take a look in the additional resources for that as well. But to teach, when we're teaching media literacy, teach it across multiple disciplines. Do not do a sit down and get. That's not the best method. Incorporate it into everyday activities or throughout all curriculums. For younger students, use things that they see on a daily basis, like candy wrappers, cereal boxes, and toy packages. For older children, use social media platforms that they like and they already use. Next. So 6 critical questions to teach kids media literacy. Number 1 is, who created it? Have your students take a look at the author. Was it a company? Was it done privately? Or is it anonymous? Number 2, ask them, why did they make it? Why did this media come across? Is it to inform? Is it informative? To create an opinion? Was it to make you laugh, or was it to buy something? Who was the message for? Is it for adults? Is it for kids, teenagers, boys, girls? Number 4, what techniques are being used to make this message believable? Take a look at its source. This is a tough one for younger kids. But with a teacher helping them out and guiding them, it's definitely a great conversation and a good starting point. Number 5, what details were left out and why? Again, see the TED Talk and additional resources. You need to observe the viewpoints, and more importantly, your students need to look at what is missing. And number 6, how did the message make you feel? Leah will focus a little bit more on some of the feelings, but again, here's a question is, what feelings did the media create in yourself? What about other people? Would people agree or disagree? And after your students ask each one of these questions, probe them to ask or think a little bit further. Why do they think that way? And this opens up the door for a deeper understanding. All right, Leah, I will pass it off to you.
All right, thank you, Christine. So yeah, as she mentioned, I'm going to be thinking about processing our emotions surrounding media. So here there are some tweets that show a variety of media mistakes. So that language of media is important to teach our students so that they are not making some of these mistakes as well. So we can see we have Donald Trump has all caps in his tweet there, shows high emotion. We can see the Regina mayor. People were assuming that she was the mayor of Regina, and we're not checking that they were tweeting at the right person. Same with in the middle tweet there. A company used a hashtag inappropriately. There are many different mistakes that can be made. The bottom right there, you'll see a recent tweet from the weekend that is kind of ill-timed in the context of the news and society right now. So we can quickly share our reactions to media, but should we? Next. So as Christine mentioned, critical thinking is really important when we are speaking to students about media literacy. It's impossible to protect people from situations, especially with these open concept social media sites. Privacy settings aren't really there to contain our media. So I really want to focus on how are we processing our emotions? So how many sources do we go to before we confirm our emotions, confirm our opinions? How are we interpreting this information and acknowledging that the way that we're interpreting this information is going to cause an emotional reaction within ourselves? And as Bart mentioned earlier, what audience is that content serving? What emotions are they trying to invoke? So for example, a common political strategy is to villainize opposing parties in order to get a emotional connection and reaction to that. Next. So emotional literacy and media literacy go hand in hand. So getting people emotionally committed to your side creates a media bias, and that emotional attraction and reaction ends up on one side of an issue or the other. So recognizing that when we are emotionally upset about some of these things, it can help us kind of empathize and understand other people's opinions when they're not honored by policies. And so as Christine mentioned, how is the media affecting other people? So when we are creating our own content, what are we putting out there that's going to create an emotional reaction from someone else? And we are responsible for that reaction, because we do have to recognize that people will have other strong opinions that may not conform to our opinions. Next. So here we have the same source writing about the same topic, but the word choice used intentionally creates an emotional reaction. So they're serving the same audience, but they are meant to trigger emotions. So we have to recognize why those emotions are coming up. So in this example here, they're both about avocado toast, but you can clearly see that one person is being villainized as opposed to the other. Next. So when we're teaching students that we're responsible for our impact of our created shared media on others, there's a structure to expressing our opinions. So in forms of civil protests, in terms of publishing content online. We're not shouting at a politician in a restaurant while they're trying to enjoy a meal with their family. We need to accept the consequences of our actions. So civil disobedience is an important thing to recognize in media literacy. And students may not know the history and context of media, so we have to provide opportunities to process media that they are capable of processing. So as Christine mentioned, bringing content that they encounter day to day. Next. All right, as Bart mentioned, we can't ignore that media has an impact, and media can raise awareness, create meaningful change. So again, here, students may not know the Me Too movement has some roots in the suffragette movement. So you can see even in the bottom left picture there, it says suffragettes cannot exist without a suffering household. So again, that's really meant to incite some emotion and create a reaction. And those reactions are kind of what fuel our opinions and can sometimes be described as passion, but as other times can influence our opinions. But make sure that we are entitled to our own opinions, but not our own facts. All right, now we're moving on to Patricia.
Thank you, everyone. Up to now, we've kind of talked a lot about bias, how children can be involved with digital literacy. And I'm going to kind of move on to the application stage a little bit and looking at some of the older ages with middle years and high school. So I began with looking at an article called Civic Reasoning in a Social Media Environment. And this referenced a United States study that was conducted across 12 states. And in this study, they gathered approximately 7,800 responses and analyzed them to discover how digitally aware students were and areas that they may be lacking in. So if we're looking just at civic reasoning, there are 3 key tasks that students were asked about. And these were identifying who is behind the information presented, evaluating the evidence presented, and investigating what other sources say. So for these 3 key tasks that were identified as being central to civic reasoning, overall the students, over 40% up to 70%, these students had high numbers of choosing unreliable information or unreliable sites as being trustworthy or being a reliable source. Now, what kind of led to these decisions for the students were that they were confused by or misled by the data and statistics that made information seem credible, or by professional appearance of the sites that they visited. So that tells us that students are sometimes not very adept at navigating the digital citizenship or digital literacy when it comes to making decisions about social and political issues. Having explored a little bit of this study that was done in 2016, we want to move on to talking about how do we begin to help students learn how to sort fact from fiction. The article highlighted 3 main areas that we need to focus on, and these are the strategies of teaching students to read laterally, helping students make smarter selections from search results, and teaching students to use Wikipedia wisely. In the first one, reading laterally is a skill that fact checkers have. They hop off unfamiliar sites and they immediately leave them and begin opening new tabs. They start to investigate that site outside of it, which allows them to assess whether or not something is credible. Making smarter selections from search results means that students are going to learn how to exhibit click restraint. They don't just select the first option that pops up when they do a search. They want to take time examining the URLs and the snippets for clues for reliable sites. And finally, Wikipedia is a resource that maybe some teachers have encouraged students to not use, but it is one of the top resource sources that students do use. So we want to teach them how to harvest the entries for links to reliable sources, how to use it in a more effective manner. They want to head straight to the references, click on links to more established venues. Now, if you're like me and you're feeling a little bit confused about how to teach this to students, there are a lot of resources out there that can help all of us. One of these was actually provided by the Stanford History Education Group. They provide a civic online reasoning curriculum that is available to all teachers with lessons, modules, and videos. And these links are included within our slideshow. We also found these other 3 sites that can be very helpful potentially, just giving us an indicator that there are so many resources out there. One of the ones that was referenced by a number of different sites was the SIFT method created by Mike Caulfield as a way to sort out misinformation on digital media platforms. And he does have a blog where you can click on and learn more, as well as learning how to explore the basic skills that he's broken down. SIFT is stop, investigate the source, find better coverage, and trace claims, quotes, and media to the original context. Another platform that I found that looked fun and it was a game is called Factitious. And this uses game skills to sort out real versus fake news stories. So again, this might be more applicable for older ages, but it is still maybe a lot of fun for them and something they might enjoy trying. Another curriculum resource that I found that is free and online is called Social Media Test Drive. Now, this was created in collaboration with Common Sense Education, which has been referenced by a number of us in our blog posts as being a potential source for digital citizenship. And they actually are aligned with the Common Sense Media Education. So I would really encourage you to check this out if it's something that you're looking for a little more assistance in. Now, we have included some additional resources on our slideshow for you, and each of these do have QR codes for you as well. And this, again, this slideshow will be made available to you. So please go ahead and check these out for further information. We also have created a Mentimeter, so all of you can assess your digital literacy skills and see where you're doing and how comfortable you feel with teaching digital literacy to your students. So we will be sharing the results of our Mentimeter on Discord later on. So I encourage all of you to check this out if you have not yet done so. Thank you so much for joining all of us. Have a wonderful day.